My name is Jon Corbin, and I'm here to hear your stories. Today on the podcast, singer, songwriter, worship leader, Personic Creative Collective teammate Rachelle Luk joins the show. We talk about the process of preparing to release an album. Rachelle has a new album out now called Even Now. But behind the album comes all the stories. We talk about the points of identity that get expressed into song and why it's okay for Christians to sing sad songs. We really get into it now. A really vulnerable episode. I hope you enjoy it. This is the Jon Corbin Podcast. It's the Jon Corbin Podcast. I'm here with my special guest. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Jon, and everyone out there. My name is Rachelle Luk, and what do I do? I am a singer-songwriter and a worship leader. Also a music teacher, but I don't do as much of that currently as I usually do. But yeah, I'm a musician. There I am.
A wonderful musician. I'll say that. Rachelle, who do you hold close?
My husband, for sure. I have a wonderful husband and a wonderful family. My parents, my brother and his kids. I have a wonderful niece and nephew. And yeah, I'm really blessed to have some awesome friends that I can really just be myself with. So I hold them close. And I'm also part of a really great church community at Mississauga City Baptist Church, and they're wonderful.
MCBC.
Yeah.
Rachelle, what inspires you?
I am easily inspired.
Okay. I like that.
I would say that. I'm also easily discouraged. But yeah, I think this is going to sound so but I find beauty in a lot of places. So anything beautiful inspires me. And I think honesty inspires me.
Okay, I like that one too. So you find beauty in a lot of places, which then I hope means that you are skilled at stopping to engage.
You know what? I think sometimes I am, and then sometimes I get surprised when I'm it just goes right by. Actually, so earlier today, I spent hours at the post office mailing off my new CD and stuff like that.
Hours.
But now I know so many things that I didn't know before. I didn't know that I had to fill out all these custom forms and that ideally I would have done that ahead of time.
Right.
But yeah, this is a story about beauty. So the lady working at the post office, I mean, this lady is working so hard, and there's this never-ending lineup of people, and of course, I'm like mailing way too many things. But amidst this kind of stress and chaos, this little child standing in line with her mom starts kind of like singing, and not like tuneful good singing, like just singing like a kid who's incredibly bored.
Right.
And the mom starts shushing the kid. And the lady who's working, she's like, no, do not tell the kid to stop. Like, I am so stressed right now. I want to hear her sing. And in that moment, I was like, I am so stressed right now because I'm trying to like mail these CDs out and bring musical beauty into the world. And right here, this child is doing it and I missed it. So there's an example. Yeah.
How bold of this woman to say, like, let the kid sing. And I immediately put myself in her shoes and said, like, I need something interesting to happen here in this, shift, and however long I'm working, however long I've been working, whatever stressors it's like to work in the post office, or, I mail mine out of Shoppers. So,
I was at Shoppers.
Yeah. So how, just what that must be like, that work environment. You're looking for interesting things like that. I would guess that would have come from a need.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she was very, and like the whole time I had been there, like working with her on these things, she wasn't, she hadn't really said very much. So yeah, I was kind of impressed. The urgency and sincerity with which she was like, let the child sing. I want this.
Wow. Wow. I don't know why my head's like in so swimming with these possibilities of what this woman must be like, but yeah, you're right. I live in I live in the suburbs west of Toronto. I live in a pretty idyllic neighborhood, and to sit and pause and look at the beauty, especially in, approaching summer weather, it reminds me of all these moments where I have stopped and sat in nature or by the waterfront and paused. I'm definitely a hurried person with a full-time job and 5 kids, but I think I am critical of myself for not engaging as much.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that you are.
Oh, I don't know that I feel the same way too, though. That like, I very often am like, how do I engage in this? I don't think I'm especially good at that, but thank you.
Do you think that those inspired moments of beauty, how much do they find their way into your music?
All the time.
Okay.
I think that's a good question to think about, like where, what is the intersection of inspiration and creative work? A lot of people think it's, you feel inspired and then the song pops out of you. Mm-hmm. And that happens like sometimes, but then a lot of times I just sit down and I work on something until the inspiration comes. But I think that inspiration comes from, even like a moment like that, or a small, image of something that I remember from 3 years ago pops into my head. So I think that all those moments kind of are somewhere in my memory. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm writing music, they just surface in different ways, sometimes surprising ways.
Yeah, I like that word, surface. That's good. You store these things and then they surface.
Yeah, I think that is it. Or sometimes like I don't realize that I stored something until it just like, it comes to the surface. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that in years, but it feels so fresh right now.
That to me then becomes like, in the last couple of years, I've been very happy to make music and share music. I've been way happier to tell stories about what goes into it. I don't know. This is your first full-length album that we're putting out?
Yes. Yeah. So up till now, I did my first EP. That was my first recording project. And then since then I've done a few singles, a few collaborations, people like you. But yes, this is my first full-length album. And maybe my last one.
Oh boy, we need to talk about that. You said that. I mean, you're about to put this out, and you're at the end of the process. I remember it always stuck with me. Coldplay said like we are going to break up at the end of every record. Like we've got nothing more to say. We've said it all.
Well, for the record, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like I'm not putting out music. I feel more motivated to put out music than maybe ever before. But I think that in the marketing phases of this, every time I mention to somebody that I like, this is an album, they're like, why are you doing that? It's 2021. Do singles. So in that sense, but although up until a year ago, I did feel very much like it was like, oh, this is as many good songs as I'm going to write. Like, I don't know if there's better stuff that's going to come out of me. But I feel very differently about that now.
That's good. I'm glad you're motivated. This is a tough one, Rachelle. Describe yourself in one word.
Oh, man. The one word I came up with is learner. I'm a learner.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that?
What do you like to learn?
I like to learn. How do I explain it? Like I am a total geek. I love reading. I love learning, like just about the world and how it works. I think the most I enjoy though is like just learning about people and how how people are. I find it fascinating.
Is that something you do by observation or through conversation or some other word that ends in ation? I'm not sure. How do you go
Realization.
realization? How do you go about learning how people are?
This is gonna sound creepy.
We'll start, and I'll decide whether it's creepy.
It's going to be. Um, that's a good question. Honestly, a lot of it is just from observing, like watching what happened with like that woman in the post office and that
Hmm.
child. Like I think moments like that, I will think about that. Yeah, I'd love just kind of watching, observing, but I also am very, I guess, introspective. Like I like learning about my personality and other people's personalities and why we're motivated to do things or not, and just the intricacies of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you said, did you say geek? I can't remember now. Yes. Are you a
Yes, I
proud geek?
did. I would say that I am.
Good.
I think also, like in general, because you're a teacher too,
Oh, I
Jon.
am.
People who love teaching love
Yes.
learning. Otherwise, why would
Yes.
we do it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I love teaching and I love learning.
That's good. I
So, although there's certain things that,
with every job.
I'm
Yeah.
not that
Yeah,
interested in,
sure.
but
With everything there's a limit to. Well, yeah, you're sparked by certain things, I would say. Um
yeah.
I definitely say, like, if I wasn't teaching, I would be in school. So I just get to be in school. And
What would you
oh my
study?
gosh, that's been a significant problem for me um, for a long time, because my wife and I had a plan, and the plan's been working relatively well, but I'm dogging it here when it's my turn. So, we get jobs and we get a house and we get kids and all that stuff sounds fairly normal, but we both still wanted to pursue education. And so my wife is going to get the master's first, and then I'm going to get the master's, and then she's going to get the PhD, and then I'm going to get the PhD. But she's already done the master's in this incredibly tumultuous time where she was opening a midwifery clinic at the same time, like starting a business essentially and doing the master's. And now it's my turn, and I couldn't decide. Could not decide.
Mm.
And then at the same time, I got signed with Lost and Found and started pursuing music at sort of a semi-professional level, and so that took energy, and I was spending several years trying to figure out where to put that energy, like into what results, whether it's to do music, to do public speaking, and I've been bouncing around a little bit, all the while raising 5 children. So what would I study? I probably could name you 4 masters right now. The most recent one that I was looking at was a master's of fine arts in creative nonfiction. So I could write a book, and I'm over the moon with this idea. And this might be COVID delayed, perhaps, because I have been writing. 2020 sort of sparked a lot of creative stuff for me, and so writing was one of those things I returned to. I think I can do something with it. The master's itself was wonderful because it was online. You had residencies. You had a week in January. You would be either in New York or Toronto, and 2 weeks in August, you would be in Halifax. And that just sounds like heaven to me.
That I
Yeah.
sign me up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and take the family out, and then we could probably do a month there, and they can go home and I can work. And so that was what I had lined up. There's all, like, I shouldn't say there's always education. I have recently conceived something that I wouldn't mind studying in terms of education and equity. It's not fully formed, so I'm gonna keep it under my hat. I love Jesus and want to study the Bible more, and I've definitely thought about going to school for like a master's in theological studies. I was sparked by that when I saw Ince Choi perform his one person play Subway Stations of the Cross. I think I'm getting that right. Do you know Ince Choi? Do you know?
I have heard his name, but I can't say I'm very
I'm
familiar
sure
with
that
his
you
work.
would know the play Kim's Convenience.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. He's the
Yeah,
writer?
he wrote the play, which then turned into the television show. I bought
Right.
both of those manuscripts that night. Started reading Kim's Convenience. I have never laughed out loud reading a play ever as that work. Several LOLs, but like to like disturbing the people around me. Like I laughed so hard at this play, and Subway Stations.
Hey, I should
You
totally
should.
read that.
You should.
I'm writing it down.
The Subway Stations of the Cross was he had gone to Wycliffe College at U of T and done a master's of theological studies, and so I was like, oh, if someone like him could go to a school like that and come up with some artistic work, then it's, okay, so here's a school that potentially would allow artistic work in combination with theological studies, and that's something that marriage of art and faith is something I'm always looking at.
While you're saying that, let me say too that I don't have a concrete plan for when this is going to happen, but kind of recently it's been confirmed that I am one day going to do that, get a master's in theological studies or an MDiv. One of those. Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I feel awesome. I'm very excited to do it. It's something that I thought before I thought that I would do it, but it was kind of like, eh. But now it's very like, yes, I'm very excited to do it.
That's good. I wish you well on that journey.
Yeah. Thanks.
So you described yourself in a word. Would you like to know how I would describe you to somebody in a word?
I
Yes.
do and I don't, but I do.
You can decline the invitation. I'm cheating because one leads to the other. The first word I would say is surprising. And what that means to me is every time I engage your work, watch you perform, or share a stage with you, I'm always surprised. And that's not because the bar is low, but each time there is this expression of depth, and that is the second word for me. Like, I think that when I love artists like this, I probably am one as well. When you go to the show, when you engage the work, when you sit, you see the level of talent and the level of thought that goes into the work. You go, oh, shoot. It catches you by surprise. And again, not because the bar is low, but you just, oh, man, that is deep. There's depth there. There's thought. There's care. And it's engaging. And that way, like, you kind of get swept up in the performance and make a connection with it that then makes you a fan. And so I've said this to you, like, we are a part of the Personic Creative Collective. But I've said this, like, I'm a fan. And so this album release is exciting to me as like a part of an artist group where someone has come to the completion of this journey. But more importantly, I'm like getting a new record, and I'm super pumped.
Wow, Jon, that means a lot to me coming from you. And I would definitely say you are that kind of artist as well.
Well, it's a good thing we're rolling together then. So I always forget. So I ask about memories, about like our first interactions or like connections. Where did we meet?
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. So I have a fuzzy memory of a lot of things. So if this is wrong, just correct me. But yeah, we met when we were both invited by Drew Brown to join the Personic Creative Collective, this little group of artists. And I actually didn't meet you in person for like a while. We just had our Slack group, and through that I just checked out your work online and engaged with you there. And even then, like, not even having met you in person, you had such a spirit of generosity with your art and with other people's art that I really admire. Yeah, and then you invited me to write a chorus.
Yeah. Okay.
That was the first thing we did together. That was Masterpiece was one of them, and then
Yeah,
there was a
there
second
were
one.
two. I want to say the summer of 2017. We had a writing session at my house.
That was the first time I met you
Yeah,
in
so we were
person.
part of this. I'm so glad. I'm so glad
Yeah.
we did. There was Creo was there and one other person. Cyril.
Cyril.
That's right. And we all wound up on the song Hope Has a Name.
Hope has a
And
name.
so
That's
I
right.
think first Lost and Found was working on a compilation, and that song was built for that. So it was connected to Lost and Found wanted to develop something that was connected to a passage of scripture, and so we were sort of with each verse was going to be inspiring a song, and so this was like, yeah, it wasn't necessarily what I would have chosen to write on, but I was keen for the challenge and really loved doing it in community. And so, yeah, we had a writing session at my house and tried to knock something out. It took a while, but we got there.
Okay, I was reflecting on that actually. And yeah, okay, I guess I'll just say this. I remember that writing session and I look back on it with a lot of regret on my own part, not at all on you guys. Because at that time, actually, in my, just development as an artist, I had really kind of closed myself off from collaborating and like trusting other people because I had been through something that, where I got hurt. And so you inviting me to be part of this collaborative thing, honestly, was a big thing for me, because at that time I had really just isolated myself as an artist in a lot of ways. And in general, I think for writing in the creative process, that to me is not natural to share it with people. I think for you, it's the opposite.
Very much so.
Yeah. And again, that's something I really admire about you and that I want to learn. And I learn from watching people like you. I think I'm definitely, in a different place now. And then in the next phase of what I do, whether it's another album or whatever, I definitely want to do a lot more collaborative work. But yeah, when I look back on that session, I was so like insecure. And I really regret that I didn't like open myself up to engage in the writing in the moment. I wanted to so badly. But yeah, as you'll remember, we kind of worked on some things, and then I was like,
take it home,
home and work on it. And I took it home and worked on it. But yeah, I look back on that and I'm like, I wish that I had been braver.
It's interesting, intuitively, because I like reading people, and I have a strong intuition. It's not perfect, but strong. Intuitively, I got that from you.
Yeah, I kind of thought that you did. Yeah.
So my approach then was, well, during that time, was to be like, let's try this. There were things I did. There were things I did that night that I'd never done before. We worked in terms of lyric writing. We worked in a Google Doc, and so like we were in the same room, but we were multiple people on the same doc, and they were looking through, and I was typing out some lyrics, and then someone would make a suggestion, and that was like one of the first times I'd ever taken notes from someone or lines from someone. Because the hip hop thing is so much about you write your own rhymes, which is not true, by the way. But that's the the thing that we hold for ourselves is a sort of authenticity. But for a long time I was like, hip hop is so based in jazz. Jazz is all about covers, right? And about your spin on something and how to elevate it. And it's like hip hop, you can't do cover songs. You can't, collaborate and write rhymes. Like, this is no fun. It's no fun not working with people. So that was a step out for me. In I was like, I would say it's the first time I've taken a line from someone or lines from someone. I have had received help once or twice before, but like in the moment to be like, actually, you said this better than I did, and you're giving it to me. And so that's the generosity going back and forth. And that's something I long to do even more. So for me, that was one of the first things I did, is sort of that humility of like, yeah, no, this is good. And if you're offering it, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to try and provide for you. I'm always looking for people to collaborate. So when you sort of stopped and started, and then like, I'm going to take it home, and I was like, okay, well, maybe that's just not your bag. Like it wasn't, the end of work. I still wanted to work with you. And what I saw was, like I said, it took a couple of passes because the beat kept changing, and the label wasn't really strong on the direction. And then the song sort of fell to me. And then the producers rewrote the beat without telling me.
Right.
And so I got really upset about that. But I remember this. I remember picking up, had the triplets. I had the triplets with me. I was picking up one of the kids from camp in the summer, and I was playing demos all the time for them. And it was interesting because you start to see what songs hit. And so you sent over what would be the final hook. Love. It's not going to work. I'm going to cut all of that out. No, I'm going to sing it just because I want to be authentic, even if it's bad. Love made a way. And I'm playing that on the drive, and by the time we get to the day camp, the triplets are singing it back, and they're like 3 years old.
That's so cool. Oh my goodness.
And I remember my little daughter,
that.
she's singing love, and I was like, oh, this is a winner.
That's so cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I ever told you though, like how I appreciate that. And like what you said, that you could read that in the moment. I felt like you did too, and that kind of made me feel
I would feel the same way.
I don't think I ever thanked you for, just inviting me to be part of that. And I think that being around people like you, and honestly, just kind of like I used that word before, but this generosity of spirit and creativity that you have, like for me, naturally, the way I come in my creativity, it's like a very like going inward, and it's so private and, like depth, I guess, like it's like I go into like the depths of myself to write. And it was a really hard process for me to learn to trust people and to just see the process in a way that like made room for it to be like collaborative. We should definitely write together again. It'll be different.
That's what I was going to say. You say you want to say thank you. I'd say let's do it again. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
I'm definitely missing that right now in this season of closure. So I always ask our guest to bring a story about creativity or collaboration, inspiration. We've already been telling some great stories. I love telling stories. Usually I let the guest go first, but you're about to release your new album, Even Now. And I think that my story actually works to tell first, because it's from your previous recorded project, and it's the song that made me a fan. So is it okay if I tell my story first?
For sure. I would love that.
So with fuzzy memories, I'm not going to remember all the lyrics, but the song Try So Hard from your EP Brought to Light 2014. It's so interesting to me. I've talked about this on other podcasts. Like, once I hit the high of a project, I don't need almost anything else. Like, just take me on that on-ramp to that high, and then we're good. But yours was like the first few seconds. Every day she looks herself in the mirror and she paints her face. Am I close?
Every morning she meets the girl in the mirror and paints her face. Yeah.
Already a fan. And I can't tell you what it is. I will say this. I've not said this publicly. My like go to for years, go to introspective, feeling moody music is acoustic singer-songwriters from females. So like way back, like Jennifer Knapp.
Yeah.
There was a great gal that I heard at the when I was working when I did the Juno panel. Jill Paquette, Jill Phillips, Ani DeFranco. I just like give me a woman singing something emotional, and I don't know, like I have this like mixtape of like songs that would just put me in my feelings and just allow me to process. There was something about creating the world that you did with this character, and as a high school teacher, as an intuitive person, like I just saw that struggle for so many young women. When we get to the chorus, and it's if she could only be a little bit brighter,
Yeah. If she was only a little bit brighter,
a little bit more like the
a little
others.
bit more like,
Finish that off for me.
if only she wasn't the way she was made. I had to sing it. If only she wasn't the way she was made, and never made any mistakes,
she wouldn't have to try so hard. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel that so much. It just hit me. And it was all of the things. It was my upbringing. It was my dad being too hard on me. It was it put me in high school for some reason, and just thinking about some of my friends. And I was in a gifted program, and so we all tried hard. We all had way too much stress, and we're too hard on ourselves. And I thought about the high school, teaching high school, and seeing all these kids from various backgrounds fighting for their path forward in life, and yeah, just anything where the pressure was so high and the standards were too high, and it's, you know, it's years of friends and counselors saying that I'm too hard on myself. I've told you that I'm a fan of the song. I told you that song made me a fan, but I've never asked you about where you went to get that. So I'm going to ask you now, like, how did you get there?
I might cry.
Well, I cry singing the song.
That was one, like the writing of the first verse and the chorus was, rarely as a songwriter you get something that just comes. That one just like it just happened pretty quickly, and then I had to work on the song after that. But this is what happened. In 2012, I had finished music school, and I had decided, instead of doing the pre-scheduled plan to become a school music teacher, that I was like, I'm gonna give this whole artist thing a real shot. And let me say to begin with, and kind of what you said about like me being surprising, I feel like I had always like looked at other people who become artists and been like, I am not interesting enough as a person to be one of them. Like, I'm just a regular person, and I love music and I love creating things, but I never, like, the difference between like creating something and like being a musician and like being an artist, I always felt like there was like a big leap from one to the next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And I always felt like this sense of like, I'm not interesting enough, or whatever it is enough to be that thing. But over and over again, as I had been in school, like doing music, and I loved it, like the thing that just made me feel the most alive was writing songs. And so I was like, okay, and I did feel very clearly that God was calling me to trust him enough to give it a shot, even though everything else was like, I don't think I can actually do this. I'm not the right kind of person. And by the way, at that point in my life, I didn't like personally know anybody who was doing this kind of work, like as an artist, a music artist. I knew a lot of musicians who played other people's music, and I was very comfortable doing that. So this idea of becoming a music artist felt like becoming a unicorn, like this thing that doesn't really exist. I don't know how to become it. Anyways, so that year I was like, okay, I'm going to just try it. And one of the first things that I did was I entered this songwriting competition that the GMA was running, and it was part of like the Covenant Awards in that conference. So I went to that conference, and that was the first like real artist thing that I had ever done. So I'm trying to get ready to go to this conference and meet these people, like producers and artists, like people that I've never been around this kind of thing before. I didn't really know these people were real people. I felt so keenly that feeling of like, I have to pretend that I'm more than I really am in order to be even considered, like to be around, to be present at this thing. And so, yeah, this is part of me is like embarrassed to tell this because it brought up, like you said, in high school, like so many insecurities that I had always had, but that you feel the most keenly, you know, in school. Mm-hmm. And here I was, you know, supposedly an adult, and I am going through those feelings all over again. Like, what should I wear? I have to wear something that makes it believable that I could be an artist, and I didn't own anything that was in that category. And I literally had to like go to my friends and be like, dress me. I cannot do this myself. Teach me how to put on makeup. I do not know how to do this. And that whole process reminded me of this one moment in grade 5. I remember it very clearly. In grade 5, I was at school and we'd finished gym class and we were getting changed to go, you know, to the next class. And I was in the washroom in the mirror, looking in the mirror. And this one girl was putting on eyeliner and she was like, hey, do you want to try this? And I had no idea how to put on eyeliner. So I'm trying to put it on and it's not like I don't know how to do this. And she says, oh, Rachelle, it's funny how you have to try so hard.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that moment like surfaced and I felt exactly like the way I felt in that moment all these years later. So yeah, on the, you know, after I went to that conference, I came home and I wrote the first verse in the chorus, just like it just came out of me.
Wow. Does the if only aspect of that song, is that a rewriting or is it declaration of regret?
I don't see it that way as a declaration of regret. I see it more as kind of the voice of like the world. This is what the world is saying to her, to me. If only you were whatever it is, more or less of whatever it is than you really are. If only you were like that, then you could be an artist or a real woman, whatever it is. I don't personally see it as like me actually taking that on for myself, that I think I should have had to do those things. So in the bridge of that song, it says, won't somebody tell her it's all a lie? And I think I use that type of writing quite often. I don't know the proper word for it. Maybe you do. It's not sarcasm. Maybe is it irony? It's like I'm saying it, if only she wasn't the way she was made. But that's not what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, I would that definitely reads as irony to me. Mm-hmm. And then back to my other word of depth, because I can hear the cry of the person saying that in earnest. If only I wasn't like that. Yeah.
And how many times I had thought that as a young girl, right? If only I looked more like her. If only I was more like that.
I grew up in Etobicoke, just outside of Toronto. I went to private school, very multicultural church. It made me feel normal amongst a group of people that changed very quickly in ways I couldn't discern when I moved into a high school that was mostly white. Where did you grow up? What were the faces around you that made you feel like you weren't or that you were standing out, or that you weren't okay or enough?
Wow, that's a huge question. And something I've been thinking a lot about, especially in recent months. Yes, for people on the podcast, I am Chinese Canadian. I was born here. My parents are from Hong Kong. So growing up here, this is like so hard for me to say. And I don't think I fully realized this until, maybe 6 months ago, as I was reflecting on race and just so much of this stuff that's surfaced. I had a life, I think, that was, when I was at school, most of the other kids were white, and there were other Asians, but there were kind of like the Canadian ones, like the ones that acted like the white kids, and the ones that were more, speaking Chinese to each other. I really, from pretty much my entire childhood, I really wanted to be white. I believed, and I was struggling to, like, when I'm looking back on this now, I was struggling to understand where that came from. But I believed that my life would be better, that I would be better if I had been white. I tried to kind of distance myself socially from the other Chinese kids who looked like me, but I didn't want to be associated with that. I wanted to be more acceptable or whatever. But then I also had like the rest of my life, like speaking Chinese at home and eating dim sum on the weekends. And I went to a Chinese church, a small Chinese church. So it was like my Chinese life was one thing. And then kind of this other life at school and in extracurriculars and ballet class, where I wanted nothing more than to be white. Yeah. And looking back on that now, it's like, I'm so ashamed of that. But I didn't really embrace my culture and my race as something that I was proud of until kind of university, those years. Yeah. Where I like now I find so much beauty in my culture and the language and the food and who we are as a people. But, I also balance that with who I am, like kind of straddling these two different worlds. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like you're saying, it sounds like it's part of a journey that you've been on. And I understand, I completely understand the idea of regret for feeling certain ways or feeling drawn to certain things. And I'm very curious about, these, I don't know if they're markers, these identities that have sort of been set up in your mind around, like, even like artists, right? They carry certain assumptions about what an artist is supposed to be, right? So even to the things like dress, like I don't know how an artist dresses. Yeah. But like I would assume then in your formative years that would that concept would have been formed and you wouldn't have seen any Chinese artists.
No.
Yeah.
I think that even my path to becoming a musician, I always loved music, but I had never even considered that I could professionally become a musician. Like I could do music on the side because it makes me smarter and therefore
Okay. Yeah.
more able to apply to medical school, which I really wanted to do, actually. Even after I did my music degree, I was like, maybe I'll go to medical school. I love biology, by the way.
Okay.
Another thing I like to learn about. The human body is fascinating.
Yeah.
God made such an interesting world. Anyways, what was I trying to say? Our Asian artists. Yeah. So I had never even considered that could be a thing. And then in high school, it was like, oh, I really enjoy music. And I think I'm pretty good at it. And so the only path that I considered doing was teaching, because to become a performer was to become something that was like just too far away from the path. Like I was already veering off the path by being like, hey, mom and dad, I'm doing music. And then to be like a performer, that would be way off. And I genuinely love teaching. So I was like, yeah, I'll become a teacher. And then in the process of studying that and then really falling in love with songwriting, that was where, like I said, the unicorn thing, it was like, first of all, I don't even know anybody who actually does this successfully, and certainly nobody who looks like me.
Sure.
And even now, especially now, as I am launching this album.
Plug.
I didn't mean to do that. I have been confronted with my Chineseness more than I have ever been before, I think. Seeing it as the reality that it is in many ways a barrier for people to see me as marketable.
Wow.
And I have had some experiences where I feel that very keenly, that it's surprising to people. If they see just a picture of me and they have not heard the music, the first thing they think is not, this person really looks like an artist. I really want to listen to this. Right? Generally speaking, I feel like they need to, I kind of have to prove that I can do this to them. Maybe more than if I was another race.
Yeah, so then it becomes clear it's not just in your head. It's like we're all suffering from, we're all suffering from the lack of representation.
Yeah.
We're all suffering from the monolith of what artistry is. Yeah.
It's a huge thing. And I think when I'm saying this now, I want to say this not like I'm complaining about the way it is. I really have done a lot of thinking just to kind of reconcile myself with this. Like, this is just the reality. This is how it is. Maybe at this moment in history, now maybe the industry and the market is more ready for an Asian female singer-songwriter than they have ever been before. I would hope that, but I don't know. But yeah, like recently I started a radio campaign, and in the process of doing that, it was like, oh yeah, I'm facing this fact that an Asian artist has never had any sort of widespread success in the Christian music industry, or charted on national radio, or, and so as I'm going into these things, like, I feel like it's like the reality is it just is what it is.
Right. You're being confronted.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really discouraging and sometimes it's really motivating.
I can understand that. And I can also understand the reserve of energy where it's discouraging or motivating. To me, in my own struggles is based on basically the reserve of energy I have. I feel like fighting you today. Fighting your misconceptions. I don't have it. I don't have the fight today. I don't have it in me today. I find community helpful with that. And that could be artistic community, or it could be people that share my difference. But I actually just want to sit with that too, because I have to pause and go, what, like you said, what is surprising? I said, maybe that's part of it. Maybe my assertion of surprising is part of that. And what I haven't seen and what I like, and what I haven't engaged. And I would definitely be willing to pause and unpack that for the artist that I'm a fan of, to sit and listen to your story in context, and knowing that you are working towards a Christian industry, working towards being present in the Christian industry, that we absolutely know that there's a monolith there, that's homogenous there. But it's thank you for bearing witness to your experiences. And I don't think it's whining at all. It is truth telling, but it's a hard truth, and so people will respond in a variety of different ways.
Yes.
And it's my hope that, for me, as I check myself, and for those that listen, that would get into your corner, to bring you energy, to bring you support, to make this difference. Like you said, there's never been an Asian person of Asian descent in this arena. Well, I feel like fighting today.
Thank you, Jon. Yeah, I mean, and for the record, when you say like maybe that is part of me being surprising as an artist, I can totally say I am surprised. I am an Asian female singer-songwriter. Like, when I look back on just all the stops and starts and the giving up and I really shouldn't try to do this anymore. There was so much of that. And a lot of that is ingrained because of representation, because of the way that I didn't value my own culture, regrettably, like I've realized how much of that was from inside of me, my own perceptions of what I can do. And even within music, for example, there was definitely kind of a, how do I say it? Like a hierarchy of things that like I could do because I'm Chinese. Like, right. When I was in music school, I was a voice major, but I also played piano. And most people assumed I was a pianist. I was a piano major, because there was a lot of Asian pianists.
Right.
And you have Lang Lang and, that whole, like, you can be a classical musician. You could even maybe become a composer. But to be a singer is another level, I think, of storytelling, or whatever people elevate that. I don't know why, but it is. And then to make a leap from classical music into like pop music, that was a whole other thing. And like you said, worship music, for example.
Sure.
I do feel that a lot of those barriers I struggled internally with. And then even through that, I saw the external barriers and I am seeing them now. I've often asked God, like, as he's confirmed to me over and over my calling as a singer-songwriter, sometimes I'm like, but why did you make me Asian then? Like, why did you make me female? It would be a lot easier for me to walk in this calling if I was something else. And, and him continually affirming to me, and through people, through my community, saying to me, you are exactly how God made you to be, and you are doing exactly what he called you to do. So he's going to do with that what he wants, right?
If you're enjoying these conversations about creativity, inspiration, community, and learning together, consider becoming a monthly supporter at patreon.com/Jon Corbin. Your monthly financial support not only allows the podcast to keep running, but it also enables it to reach higher heights. There are no tiers or levels of support. Simply pay what you choose. Patreon supporters get regular behind-the-scenes updates on the show, sneak peeks at upcoming guests, as well as access to whatever creative material I'm working on, whether that's exclusive songs, poems, essays, DJ mixes, and a whole lot more. Check it out at patreon.com/Jon Corbin. We are back on the Jon Corbin podcast. My guest is Rachelle Luk. We've had a fantastic conversation so far, and we're about to talk about this new album that you are releasing called Even Now. And what's the release date?
It is June 11th, 2021.
That's fantastic. So when you're hearing this, it will have already released. And so we're talking to Rachelle on the journey to release and writing customs cards and mailing CDs and all that good stuff. But it's a 10-track album, and Even Now, I'm very interested in this title. Where did it come from? What sparked the name Even Now?
Well, actually, titling the album was a real struggle. I went through some different ideas. I really chose it because of all the title tracks. I felt like it expressed, just in one short phrase, what is at the heart of this whole record, kind of the underlying theme. So the song Even Now expresses, even now, I trust that you are good. Even now, my praise belongs to you. Mm-hmm. It's a song of lament, of grief, of sorrow. And in that moment, expressing that grief and sorrow to God, saying, even now, even in this moment, I'm going to lift up my praise to you. And that song in particular, I can go more into like the bigger circumstances of the years, the 5-year period when I wrote all of these songs. It was, a really hard, low time in my life. But this song in particular, so I was already in this low time. At one point, somebody that I love committed suicide. And I remember getting that news. And that weekend I was supposed to lead worship at church. So I get this news, and the next day I go to rehearsal with my worship team. And I was just struggling to reconcile that, I'm about to lead these songs of praise. And I do honestly mean them. I do. God is still good and all of these things that we're about to sing, but I don't know that I can do an uppity song this weekend, Mm-hmm. I might have to change that up. And so this song for me just came out of my own time of worship and kind of, if those songs that were on the set originally, I didn't, it was a leap for me to sing them right away. What is a song that I could sing now, even now? So
I think about, the variety of people that listen to the show, and I think about, for those that might not share my faith, mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain worship.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to explain.
But I definitely resonate with the sentiment because, we haven't known each other for all of this period of the songwriting, for some of it. But then, as you got to know me, that we had the crisis of having triplets and trying to figure out how to make a new life. And then I had some health stuff, and then my wife went through some job stuff. And it was just like, it was multiple crises.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like the idea of turning away from these problems in a desperate hope that there's something out there that knows and cares for us, that's beyond us. It is this resistance to despair, I think. Yeah. I hear that in the song, but what's cool about it, and some of the artists that we know and run with, is, I hope cool is an okay word, is that it's authentic in the pain. Yeah. I hear that regularly in the album. that you are willing to go there, depth, when things are not all good. I imagine that there, I imagine that there are, I imagine that that's a criticism of Christians in general, that we can be so happy clappy that we aren't willing to sit in the mud. So that's, there's a real, I want to say a turning point from the album, like, Even Now lands right in the middle. Yeah. And then you go there, right? You go Scars.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one too.
Yeah. To be honest, I really, I went back and forth so many times on Scars on whether I should include it on this record. But my producer was like, I love this song. It's my favorite. Do not cut it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because of exactly what you're saying. But I do want to come back to that thing about how do we explain worship to people who don't share our faith. Let me just remind me of that. But pain, and let's talk about pain in Christians, shall we, Jon?
Christians have pain.
We do, but then we're not allowed to say that we do, or we're not allowed to express it. Okay, so here I'm gonna do that whole irony thing where I say things and I'm being kind of sarcastic, but kind of not. All right, so it'll make sense if I tell more of the story of those 5 years when I wrote this album. In those 5 years, I did not write these songs because I was like, I'm going to write, launch an album after this. That was not where I was at. Scars was the first of these to be written. After my first EP, I pretty much gave up on music. I am ashamed to say. But at that time, right after, around the time of that release, I went through something very painful, where I was betrayed by somebody in the industry that I was working with. And it really just shook me. That was the thing that I said, I couldn't trust people for a while after that. I really struggled creatively to trust people. And so, that kind of just spiraled into a whole lot of other insecurities and mental health things that I was experiencing. And, I live with depression and anxiety, and I have learned now how to live with them and to have a full life. But at that time, I had not. And so that event, I was depressed. I was living a very defeated life. I couldn't understand why God would call me to pursue music and then allow this mess to happen. And so I was in this kind of already low, lost point. And then my husband, who had always been very strong and healthy, kind of suddenly and without much explanation became sick. And he had chronic fatigue for 5 years. And we, struggled to, even at the beginning, to find out what this is. And chronic fatigue is one of those things that's really like when they really have nothing else to call it. This is what they call it. But it changed everything about our daily lives. It changed everything about my world and my options. Everything became much smaller. Honestly, it had a very similar effect on our lives as kind of COVID did for everybody. Yeah. In a lot of ways, because we had been through that, adjusting to COVID life was like, we were just like, we'll just go back to what we had done for 5 years. And I'm not making light of that, but I am saying that after that journey of 5 years, we really learned how to find joy and laughter in the midst of pain and disappointment. Like, I think a lot of us, even within the church, there's this idea that, there will be this trial or hard time, and then God will deliver you and you will experience joy. It's like a before and after kind of a thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And that does happen sometimes. But I think we are a lot less equipped to deal with things when that's not the case. And we learned through that there are times where the pain and the disappointment are there for a very long time. And in the midst of that, God gave us joy and laughter. You know, and I think that sometimes we, like, for the first couple of years, I wasn't even looking for that. I wasn't expecting any of it. So I wasn't able to receive any of the joy. I was looking for the answer to that prayer, you know, that God would fix this thing. And then I would have joy in him and joy in my marriage and whatever. But he really gave us this gift through that season of, we have pain, we still have disappointment, we're still grieving these things, we're still struggling. But we also are experiencing his goodness. We're experiencing joy in him and in each other and in our community. And that was a gift that, I don't know, I wasn't prepared to receive that. And I think because of that, I had a lot of conversations with people who quite honestly didn't know how to address my pain. They didn't know how to enter into my pain. They just knew how to hope for the end of the problem.
Right. So I definitely understand that idea of not being able to receive, and especially since we talked about earlier, the capability to see beauty, right? And so it is still a thing that I marvel at in trying to find the good in the difficult situation. And that is, and this is what I think, this is what I honestly think about God, is that I don't think God trivializes any of it. I think it's like you said, even if you couldn't receive it, it was still there.
Yep.
And so the goodness of your relationship, the goodness of any, you know, acts of kindness or community or whatever, like, yeah, like even it's still there. And so these songs then become cries from the soul and to the same soul. Like, this is okay. This is the depth of emotion that you're feeling. This is how hard it is. And we acknowledge that and lift up your eyes.
Yeah.
For there's goodness there too.
Yeah. I think that I'm so glad that the Bible has an entire book called Lamentations. Like the fact that God was like, I'm going to put this in there and call it Lamentations so people can't label it anything else. Yeah. And I think that's an example. It's like, well, we always quote Lamentations 3, and we should, because that is the turning point, right? The part where after the expression of pain, it's like, but this I call to mind, I have hope in the Lord. But we don't quote Lamentations 1 and 2, like the laundry list of pain and suffering. And I think that one of the things I wanted to accomplish with this album was to express pain and sit in it, like let people feel the pain, not because we're whining or complaining, but because we're humans.
Yeah. And
to have that be sacred and good. And good. And not, I don't know, I still struggle with that. I think there have been some Christian communities where I feel like I can do that in an authentic, healing way. And yes, we do mourn. We do not mourn as those who have no hope. That is the quote, right? We do have hope. But I think that there are many cases that I encountered where I think really because of their discomfort, Christians would try to rush to the hope.
Sure.
Like you can have a bite-sized bit of pain, but you have to move on right away to the hope. Otherwise, you're kind of betraying God, or, cheating him of his worship and goodness. Like you don't think of him as good enough if you are still experiencing your pain. And there's kind of this idea. And in some ways, it's like we have to go to secular music to express our negative emotions. Right? And yeah, so one of my goals was to tell a fuller story of what it is to walk with Jesus through life. Mm-hmm. That I am a human being. And Jesus was too. He experienced pain and grief, and he wasn't afraid of other people's pain and grief. So why are we?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about Jesus wept for the last year more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Was not afraid of pain and grief. And that's it, because I know, I watch my kids, one kid hurts the other kid. Ow! Sorry. We just let's just get to the end of this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we are afraid of pain. We're afraid of other people's pain. We don't know how to deal with it. We can't fix it.
Yeah. Oh, so let me finish my thought on Scars. I had started telling you that a bit. I'll do this quick. So Scars was the first song that I had written. It was the first song that I wrote after I, quote, gave up on music. And I had stopped writing for a while, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. But yeah, I've always found songwriting to be a time where I meet with God. And so this song, Scars, is a song narrated by my scars. They're talking to me. They're saying, I'm here. I tell you this story of what happened to you. And now I'm telling you to never risk anything again, because then you'll get another scar. And that was how I was really living my life. I was like, I got hurt. I'm not doing anything to risk that ever again. And for some reason, this kind of dark song of letting my pain verbalize itself to me and say to me all these things that are not from God. These limiting things that say, you will get hurt, live a small life. That was actually very healing for me. And I realized that pain is not something we can avoid. I think too often Christianity becomes about pain avoidance. And that's not what Jesus came to offer us. The whole underlying message and theme of this record is that in the kingdom of God, in the way of Jesus, redeemed pain is more powerful than removed pain.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that pain was not removed.
No.
But it was redeemed. And here is the record to prove it.
You Asian female singer-songwriter that writes to Christians about pain.
Yeah, I want to be that. I don't know if anybody out there is like, I wish there was someone doing this, but here I am.
Well, I've played on stages with you. I've seen you perform. I know that you can connect. And the best authentic art does. There will be barriers, but like I said earlier, I feel like fighting. This is a record worth fighting for, definitely. And I'm thankful that you were able to share what went into it.
Thank you, Jon. Yeah. I think especially now with everything that we are living through, that talking about pain and hope and where they intersect is what we all need. So, yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here.
I am the shadow on your skin of every fall you've ever taken. I am the proof of what you've left behind. I am the lasting evidence of every painful accident etched on a surface you can't redesign. Didn't I teach you not to play with fire? Didn't I warn you not to climb so high? How many times must I remind you? Be on guard. Be careful, or you'll earn yourself another scar. I hate to say I told you so, but I think your heart already knows. Trading your safety brings no guarantees. I've heard already you've got plans to reach out and risk yourself again. What if the next time I can't stop bleeding? Didn't I teach you not to play with fire? Didn't I warn you not to climb so high? How many times must I remind you? Be on guard. Be careful, or you'll earn yourself another scar. Bruises fade, but scars remain. Scars remain. Time keeps passing. What will stay? What will stay? Bruises fade, but scars remain. Scars remain. Will you remember the healing or just the pain? Didn't I give you all my good advice? Didn't I say that you would pay a price? How many times must I remind you? Be on guard. Be careful, or you'll earn yourself another scar. Another scar. Another scar.
Thank you so much for listening to the Jon Corbin podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, why not become a part of it? Hit me up on social media. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are all at Jon Corbin Music. That's JONCORBIN. That's right, it's John with no H. You can stay on top of my music and creative work at joncorbinmusic.com. Finally, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like, share, favorite, and subscribe. Spreading the word is one of the best things you can do to help this podcast grow. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon.